Thank you. So, three-part question is: one, what is the ideal diet for preventing Alzheimer's? And I don't know if there is one for Parkinson's. Number two, does the ideal diet include whole food plant-based fats, meaning raw seeds, raw nuts, avocados, raw olives, and even possibly oils like hemp, flax, and chia? And then part three is, where does fruit fit into this?
I'd love to jump in on this one if you don't mind. As far as fruit goes, when you look at glycemic load, and it's unfortunate that many doctors are still using glycemic index, which is extremely inaccurate. But when you look at glycemic load, I know that Brian Clement doesn't want blood sugars to go too high, but we also don't want them to go too low. Blood sugar should be maintained somewhere in the range of 70 to 90 milligrams per deciliter. This is the optimum range. So if you eat whole fruit, not fruit juice, not dried fruit, but whole fruit, and if its glycemic load isn't too high, most fruits are in there. Apples, pears, berries, these are all in the low glycemic load range. They will slowly absorb and keep your blood sugar at the optimal level without exceeding the amount, if, of course, you don't have insulin resistance to the point that people with diabetes already do. As far as the fats and oils in whole intact foods, you mentioned avocados, great. Nuts and seeds, great. The only nut that I would not recommend would be coconut because of the lack of vitamin E and the excesses of saturated fats. But otherwise, these whole fats are great. I do not encourage extracted fats like oils. Instead of chia oil or something, ground flaxseed are a great source of omega-3 fatty acids. They're very helpful. And what was the first part?
Fruit fat, and what's the overall diet you're recommending?
Well, for prevention of Alzheimer's disease, you would want to have a diet that supplies all of your essential nutrients, vitamins and minerals, as well as the correct amount of fats, but not just the correct amount of fats, but the correct fats. Humans only need two essential fatty acids, linoleic, the omega-6, and alpha-linolenic, the omega-3. Other than that, adult humans have no requirement for saturated fat or EPA or DHA or any other fat. And as far as EPA or DHA goes, well, they can improve our cardiovascular risk, but they may also increase our cancer risk because of pollutants and rancidity. So there's a bit of a balancing act there. So algal oil would be a better choice. In my book, Fats and Oils Demystified, I have a whole chapter on how we can convert the plant-based omega-3 into EPA and DHA. So I would say the best diet is going to be a whole food plant diet, but carefully chosen so each of the nutrients is present. And I do think that normally diets need to be supplemented for several reasons, and mostly because I analyze diets and I see that each diet I analyze may be deficient in, say, zinc. But zinc is necessary for superoxide dismutase to protect our brains. And that is true for Parkinson's and Alzheimer's disease. If we don't have copper or manganese or selenium, our endogenous antioxidants don't work, superoxide dismutase and glutathione peroxidase. So we may need to take some supplements along with this whole plant diet in order to get everything we need to keep our brains sharp, especially folate and vitamin B12. Those are crucial for creating S-adenosyl methionine, known as SAMe, which methylates or quenches those very genes that create the secretase enzyme so that they don't create them. It's epigenetically stopping this. I don't want to talk too long. You can tell I'm enthusiastic about this. Great question.
Well, and this is your area of expertise, which is fantastic to have here. But what about, is this an area, is this a concern if you've got people who are taking too much fructose in terms of their potential for cognitive decline?
Well, yes and no. Yes, if it's high fructose corn syrup in a drink and they're guzzling tons of it, and definitely no if they're eating a piece of whole intact organic fruit. This is really a big difference. So we can do that. We can handle that. Now, you mentioned uric acid, and I think it's very interesting that uric acid, we all think of gout, right, when we say uric acid. Did you know that uric acid is a very important antioxidant in our systems? Absolutely. And it helps to protect our brain and all of our bodies. One of the reasons why dairy products are so damaging with Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease is that dairy products suppress uric acid in the body. So we're losing one of our important antioxidants. Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah, and of course, Bruce Ames showed years ago that if you look at the loss of antioxidants in the blood as you now start to insult, uric acid is one of the first ones to disappear. So it's one of the first ones used up, and therefore likely to be a critical one, as Bruce showed, many, many years ago. So I absolutely agree. And if you just do the epidemiology, of course, people with high uric acid have a slight protection from cognitive decline.
That's right.
So there's a real paradox there, I think, in terms of uric acid. We need people like you who really understand nutrition to understand and to explain to us this paradox.
Well, it's that the antioxidants all work together. It's all of them. The exogenous antioxidants, vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin E, they work together with our internal antioxidant enzymes, and uric acid is one of them, as well as catalase and ubiquinone too, coenzyme Q10. All of these work together. And in our Hawaii dementia prevention trial, which I wrote and ran and then wrote the paper in the book, Nutrients from Memory afterwards, this is a randomized controlled trial. And we were able to take people from, they were 19 on the mini mental state exam, just barely into dementia. And within 3 months, they were up to 27. They dropped in the next 3 months to 26.5. And at the end of the 9 months trial, they were up to 29 out of 30.
Wow.
Because we used 16 different interventions, many of which encourage antioxidants. But antioxidants are more of a long-term prevention of Parkinson's disease because they protect, of course, dopaminergic cells too, and the hippocampus and all the other areas of the brain. More short-term effects are also seen with other of our approaches there.
Yeah. One additional thought on diet is I get concerned about what's either on what I'm eating or what's in what I'm eating. And especially nerve toxins like pesticides. So there's this one pesticide called paraquat, increases the risk of Parkinson's by 150%. One of the most widely used herbicides in the country. 30 countries, including China, have banned it, but the US hasn't. It's used on corn, it's used on grapes, it's used on other foods that we eat. Another pesticide called chlorpyrifos, EPA finally banned it last year, but widely used on Washington state apples. A study done in France looked at all the French wines that were produced, and every single bottle of French wine that they tested, basically the Consumer Reports of France, found detectable levels of pesticides in every single one of them. Now they were still low, but it's still a little bit concerning that even the organic wines had detectable levels of pesticides found in them. And then, some of these pesticides get concentrated throughout the food chain. Many of them are food chain, many are fat soluble, so that when you drink fatty substances, that they can have pesticides in them. And as you know, most people know the brain is very fatty, so that these fat soluble pesticides could be making our way into the brain. And indeed, studies have found remnants of these pesticides in the brains of people with Parkinson's disease. So wash your fruits and vegetables and buy organic, and tell your congressman to sign Senator Cory Booker's bill that would ban paraquat.
I wish that it were enough to buy organic and wash your vegetables, but it's not. Because as you know, the persistent organic pollutants, the organochlorines, the polychlorinated biphenyls, the polybrominated diphenyl ethers, DDT and its breakdown product DDE, these are all lipophilic, fat-loving, and they are bioaccumulated, as you just mentioned, in the food chain. And they are bioaccumulated. So if you get a grass-fed cow who's eating grass that has never been sprayed, organic, that grass has detectable levels of these in it, and the cow bioaccumulates them. And then you get a human eating either the milk or the meat of the cow, it bioaccumulates, as you mentioned, in the fattiest area of the body, which is the brain. So that this bioaccumulation occurs in animal fat, but does not occur, of course, in plant fat, because they just grow once. And so unfortunately, buying organic is not enough when it comes to animal products. It's not helpful enough. I wish it were, but definitely buy organic everywhere else. Well, for me, my website is drsteveblake.com. Thank you all. It's been a pleasure.